Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting me lay out House Bill 25 today. Good morning, everybody. In 2014, the U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78.9 years. We are now experiencing the sharpest decline in more than a century. In countries like Spain and Switzerland, the average lifespan is 5 years longer than Americans. And the Canadians will outlive us by 3 years, despite significantly less healthcare costs per person. I was shocked to learn the US ranks 60th in average lifespan and, of course, first in healthcare spending. In the US, we spend $4.5 trillion annually on healthcare, with 90% of those expenditures on chronic and mental health conditions. For comparison, the food industry grosses $1.46 trillion, with 45% of that as gross profit. There is a 79% increase in early onset cancers for Americans. That's cancers for people under 50 years of age, and a drastic increase in heart and liver related disease. 42% of adults and 20% of children are obese. According to the CDC, 1 in 3 Americans aged 17 to 24 are ineligible to serve in the military due to their weight. This is now a national security problem. We hear these statistics and continue spending money to prescribe medications to treat chronic illness and obesity instead of combating the causes. Recent studies have shown the link between an increase in ultra-processed foods and an increased risk of early mortality and links to depression, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Ultra-processed foods are 73% of the US food supply and 52% cheaper than minimally processed alternatives. But that cost doesn't include the healthcare spending, lost productivity, and societal effects of disease. Members, we need to break the system. And while there's a whole lot more I'd like to see done here, this bill is introduced, does 4 things. Establishes a nutrition advisory council with a focus on metabolic health, functional medicine, and chronic disease. It requires food labels to warn consumers which ingredients are banned in other countries, requires daily PE, and prohibits the removal of recess and PE for disciplinary reasons, requires updated nutrition training for all Texas physicians, medical residents, and medical students. Senator Kolkhorst and her team have worked very hard on this bill. I'm very thankful for them and very proud to partner with her on this. I intend to work on a substitute based off the Senate engrossed version, which passed unanimously out of committee and unanimously off the Senate floor. Every member was present and voted 31-0 in a bipartisan show of support. This is where our society and our country want to go, and we want Texas to lead the way for our nation on combating chronic disease. Based on feedback, Senator Kolkhorst expanded the PE and recess requirements to public charter schools, extended nutrition curriculum requirements to all Texas public high schools and public universities. It refined the conflict of interest language for the Nutrition Council, and it prohibits a private right of action against violators. And most significantly, it provides a set list of ingredients that must be labeled rather than expecting manufacturers to know what ingredients are banned in other countries. And it provides a very long runway for the labeling adoption by requiring it only of new or changed labels developed after January 1st of 27. After additional feedback, Senator Kolkhorst took language on the floor, adopting 3 amendments for HEB that specify this applies to all products sold in the state, that this does not apply to prepared food ready for immediate consumption, and it removed carrageenan, which is a thickening and binding agent from the ingredient list. A final amendment from Senator Schwertner would now apply the nutritional education to nurses as well. Members, I appreciate all of Senator Kolkhorst's work on this. I personally don't think this bill goes far enough, and that we should require warning labels for other things that are linked to chronic disease, like high fructose corn syrup all seed oils, saccharin, sucralose, aspartame, foods sprayed in glyphosate, and better labeling for genetically modified food. But right now, those are not in this bill. This list is actually based off of HEB's list of 200 ingredients that they have identified and removed from their HEB Select product line. And that was cross-referenced with ingredients that other countries determined are unsafe. HEB Select products are great for people who can afford them, but for people who are trying to stretch their money as grocery prices go up, they're left with products that are affecting their health and they don't even know it. People assume because it's on a shelf in the grocery store that it's safe to eat. There is a drastic difference in what is produced to sell to Americans and what is sold in other countries by the exact same companies. Canadian Fruit Loops and British ketchup have entirely different ingredient lists because other countries have determined that these products aren't safe to eat and are linked to chronic disease. Texans deserve to at least know about the products they're buying, so manufacturers have a choice to label it or remove it. This isn't a ban. This is a bill about education and transparency for Texans. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired of their kids being sick and tired with chronic health, behavioral health, and mental health disorders. Texas families deserve better. So I'm happy to answer any questions, looking forward to hearing from our witnesses, and I'd like to reserve my right to close.
Yeah, you will certainly have that. Just a couple of questions, and I'll
Yes.
open it up. I know you will get some others. Define ultra-processed. I mean, I have a pretty good idea what it is, but...
Oh, well, let's think. All the chips, candies,
No, I
there's
just didn't
so
know if there
many
was something with
different things.
ultra-processed that, I mean, it's just more processed than a little processed. I didn't know if there was a specific...
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's everything that is, I guess, more than, well, it's defined in studies, so I could pull up those studies.
That's
But I can send them to you. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's-
it's like
that's okay.
chips, candies, all of those types of things. And even things, some of our breads have become ultra processed. So it could be, I can pull up the studies
Okay,
if you would like me
that's
to.
okay. So the Nutrition Council, you mentioned the lack of conflict, I guess trying to protect against conflicts of interest on the
Right.
Nutrition Council.
Right.
Which I think is hugely important, because one of the things I've gotten told as people have been working this bill is the U.S. should handle all of the labels, right? That shouldn't be a Texas thing, that we need to be consistent. And one of the problems I have with the U.S., and this is equal opportunity on both sides of the aisle, with the U.S. in terms of the way this stuff has been handled, is the incredible conflicts of interest in the government agencies as it relates to private companies, the constant back and forth. And it sometimes feels like the government agencies that are supposed to be protecting us against having basically crap for food are in the pockets of those who are making the food. Is that
Yes.
fair?
Yes, that is
Except that I
fair.
shouldn't have said that word I'm going to get in trouble with
you
my
know.
wife for saying that word on the dais. Yeah, that's in the middle, right? That's not like terrible word to say, but it's not really great to say here.
So it just goes back to, again, like the Canadian Fruit Loops, the ingredients are completely different. And so Americans, Texans, we should just have the right to know those differences. Why are they choosing to do it different for America versus Canada versus like the British ketchup?
Yeah,
So-
it really is staggering when you read some of the labels and you can't understand the vast majority of what it is. Makes you think. Members, any questions? Any other questions? Yes, Vice Chair Busey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Hull, for working on this. Your layout talking about the obesity challenges and the change of life expectancy, I think is an important issue that we need to be addressing. And you talked about the 4 things your bill does, and a lot of it I like. I work in youth competitions. So I put on competitions in athletics, arts, and academic competitions. And so while I am on board with more PE, I'm worried about the side effects of that, meaning potentially less time for arts and other types of curriculum electives. And so I just want to know if you or the senator have thought about that, had those conversations. I think we're going to have a witness talk about that. I want more PE. I want more physical activity. I don't want to lose arts in the process. And I'm just trying to think through how we can handle that with the limited minutes of the day in school. So that's one of my concerns. I don't know if you have any thoughts or feedback on that.
Yeah, I agree, and I can't speak for Senator Kolkhorst, but I'm sure she would agree. Nobody wants fine arts to go away or to lose that. That is definitely not the goal. So we can, happy to look at language. We do think that the increased PE time is very important, but again, also not trying to affect fine arts either. So
Absolutely.
we
Yeah, no,
can take a look at that.
Thank you for that. And we're going to hear some people, and so maybe they can give us some ideas, but I do hope we can sit down and work on that and make sure
sure.
that we can do both. Maybe I would have liked one or two less math classes so we can put in some more arts. I think one of the other things, and the education point for our medical professional and stuff, I think is helpful. The other area that concerns me, and I think you did in your layout, and I tried to write it down, and I wasn't fast enough, is the labeling requirements, specifically from the idea of it adding more costs. And I don't believe that the corporations are going to take on that cost. I think they're going to pass it on to the consumer. And I'm concerned with, as we're seeing in the current economy, costs are still going up. And if we were adding more costs, and some of the numbers we've heard, I'm sure you've heard, everyone on this committee has heard, we're talking about millions of dollars if we were to do this overnight with the labeling. And you addressed, I think, a timeline.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that the timeline makes sense, that we can utilize products we have without having to go redo everything, knowing that there is some benefit to what you're talking about with new labeling, but also I don't want the cost of eggs to continue to go up. So how are we addressing that, and how are we making sure our timeline works with the needs of industry? Because again, I believe the consumer will be the one that loses out in the long run with that increase of cost.
Well, again, with the extended runway, so January 1st of 2027, that gives them plenty of time. These companies redo their labels all the time, and even sometimes just because of like the food supply chain, if ingredients change, they then have to update their labels anyways. So this gives them plenty of time to change their label and do all of that. So they're really, because they have to do it anyways, there really should not be much cost at all. That would then be pass on to the consumer.
And
I
your
completely understand that.
Your January 1, 2027 was not part of the original bill, right? That's something y'all been working on
Correct.
since getting feedback?
That's what came out of the Senate, and so that's what we are looking at, taking all of those changes from the Senate and then having further conversations to do another substitute here. But you are correct.
Sure.
That is not in the laid out version here before us today, but that was what came out of the Senate.
No, that's helpful. I'm hoping I'm sure we're going to have witnesses talking about food labeling based on
Yes.
the office
Oh,
visits.
yes.
I hope we can maybe try to address what is a fair timeline between the balance and making sure we're not passing on the consumer.
Absolutely.
And if that's it, or if we need to tweak it. And then finally, when you're coming up with the list of things to add to the labels, I just want to make sure we're doing this in scientific reasoning for it. And so I think you spoke a little bit to it. Can you talk a little bit more about how the list is determined? Are there professionals in this list and scientific professionals way beyond my pay grade to understand what we should be warning people about more properly? And if how we came to that, what were the standards to come to that? And if so, what can we do to shape it further?
Yes, so part of that, again, not in this introduced version, but it's what came out of the Senate. Significant changes were made to that. And again, it was because manufacturers, so they don't have to go and figure out what is banned in other countries. And so it is a specific list. And again, that started with the HEB select list and then cross-referenced with what is banned in other countries. And so that is where that came from. And then the other change that was made was HEB asked to have carrageenan removed from that list because it is technically not banned in other countries. And so that was a change that they made over on the Senate side as well.
Okay. And I don't know if we're going to have someone from HEB talk about the scientific background of their list, but I think that would be helpful. And then you have the new advisory council.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the positions on that council?
Yes.
And then if there's good feedback on why someone's being left off, we'd love to hear that so we can shape a better council if needed.
So the advisory council is one expert, so they're governor appointed, one expert in metabolic health, one licensed physician certified in functional medicine, one member representing the Texas Department of Agriculture, one member representing a rural community, one member representing an urban community, And also in the Senate, what the conversations and what we're looking to do is to add a pediatrician to that list. And so now it talks about in there, and that was when we were going over the conflicts of interest, making sure that there are no conflicts of interest, and that the goal of this is to have, obviously, unbiased information to make recommendations. And when we're talking about whether the labeling, the curriculum, all of these things, the goal is to have very unbiased, scientifically based information. And so, but again, the recommendation to add the pediatrician was in conversations in the Senate, and I am very open to that and would like to see that in a
Okay.
Substitute.
And I really brought the question up because I also don't know the answer, but I think as we have people come and testify, if that list is not inclusive enough, we'd love to hear it and why, so then we can give that feedback with the bill author.
On the rural community, urban community members, there's room for members of the public, and who it's kind of vague for
Sure.
for
For a
that
reason.
reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I have right now. Thank you,
All right,
Representative.
very good. I know we've got some other questions that'll be coming from the dais. I know
Yes.
Representative Pearson has some, and so, but we are going to need to put a pin in it for right now.
Okay.
If there's no objection, House Bill 25 would be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and House Bill 25 is left pending. The chair moves that the committee stand in recess until final adjournment or recess of the House or during bill referrals if permission is granted. Is there objection? Hearing none, the motion prevails. The committee stands in recess.